Thank you very much, and I'd like to appreciate the invitation from the conference organizers, especially IEEE Power and Energy Section of India, Mr. Sri Chandra. Thank you very much for the invitation and for including us in your program. So developments in this environment that we're talking about today are very similar across the world. And I think, like other speakers have said, I'm not going to give you some groundbreaking answers to the challenges that we all face. A utility business is basically a utility business, and there are a few dynamics that play, but essentially it's the same business. I am from Eskom in South Africa. The small star at the bottom there signifies approximately where I am. If you can see the background, the watermark on the bottom side of Africa is where we are. And I work for Eskom. Some stats on Eskom. We are the largest in Africa, and some stats there to show you our generation installed base, 42 gigawatts, and with a annual peak of around 37. And that 24 terawatt hours is incorrect. It's actually 240 terawatt hours, about 40,000 employees. And we are ranked between 7, 8, 9 by generation as well as by sales. And we have a new build program, which we haven't embarked on in quite a number of years. Probably our last power station is over 20 years old that we built. So we have two new coal-fired power plants. Medupi and Gusile is what they are called, that are new generation power plants, supercritical, dry-cooled, and so on. We also have a government program called the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program that is run by the Department of Energy, and our role mainly there is to perform integration studies and to provide quotations for connection onto the system. We only have two renewable plants, a 100 megawatt wind plant, and we have been involved in a 100 megawatt CSP plant as well. My colleague from South Africa, Mr. Msebenzi, earlier showed the IRP 2030 aspirations that the country has developed. For your own information, you can read up on that. It shows you our transition as we get into cleaner options. And that obviously would align with the promises that were made at COP21. You will see that the mitigation is definitely, well, let me say the adaptation is certainly around nuclear for us. Eskom's been a global energy company before. We are struggling now with power cuts, load shedding, and very critically reduced reserve margin. But in the years gone by, we were quite the utility to behold. My topic today is on new business models. So I have put in these graphics here that probably represent what we are facing. Very important to register this, that the game is changing. And some of these graphics depict that. Endangered energy. And the graphic at the bottom shows you the different, the evolution of energy sources over the years. From wood, coal, oil, natural gas now, and asking the question, what is the next energy source? Lots of headlines internationally, if you look at the media, spelling the death of the utility as we know it, and especially with sources of energy like solar, the questions being asked are, will solar cause a death spiral for utilities? So people are looking out there, the vultures are settling. Like I said in discussion with a colleague, it's the same amount of money moving around. And if any new business is going to take part in the energy business, it essentially means less for the traditional utility. Very simple arithmetic. I will talk about four waves, I could say, mega trends that are causing this need to look at new business models. Four mega trends in my research that I've come across. It's been said before as well that energy efficiency is very much part of the solution. In this case, we are not necessarily shifting energy sources, but rather being more efficient on the user side. And that comes with everything that it does. We have a whole lot of industry around this area. Smart appliances, the ranking of products in terms of that scale of A to G. We have huge drives in most countries to change from the old inefficient lamps. South Africa has had a large rollout program for compact fluorescent lamps over the years. We have had a large program on solar water heaters, so taking the geysers in the homes from the mains into a solar source. We have heat pumps as an option while the program is running, subsidized by the utility and by the state, and so on. So energy efficiency is coming into our everyday life. It's good practice. It's like exercising. So you don't have to change your outer make, but certainly you can be fitter and leaner. So that is the first mega trend. The second mega trend that we all know about is demand management, or energy conservation, as it is known in some circles. And this really is about peak clipping, trying to avoid that additional investment that you would need in infrastructure just to cope with the peaks. And the more you can clip that peak, obviously, the better for your capital outlay. And these initiatives have, in fact, reduced growth on the utility side of the meter quite significantly. That 1% may not look like much, but it could be a power station. It could be a power station for very big systems. And distributed energy resources, whether they are clean or not. In this case, I'm not necessarily talking renewables, but also coal IPPs, which are closer to the load. They definitely do reduce emissions through reduced losses. And in South Africa, we've recently seen a decline in demand. It's arguable whether this is energy efficiency and conservation, or in fact the declining economy. But in any case, we have seen a decline in demand. The third mega trend is direct decarbonization. That's been spoken about in the previous session. So not just exercising to be leaner and meaner, but and also not just clipping the peaks, but in fact substituting the source of generation. And obviously we have spoken about a whole lot of technologies that are used for that. And the arguments continue around 2 degrees and the modeling that comes with that, as well as whether that is sufficient or not.
2 minutes, Mr. Moyo.
The greenhouse effect, we know about that, and hence my question was to say, could you overcorrect? Could you overcorrect, do such a good job with decarbonization that in fact you precipitate a new ice age? That's a question still to be, you can think about that. The sources of absolute emissions, you can see, it's mainly related to economic activity, GDP growth. And of course, you could plot this on a per capita basis. I don't know what is fair. Is it per capita basis? Is it per dollar of GDP produced? But certainly, when you look at efficiency of producing goods and services, countries like Brazil and France stand out quite well because of renewables and nuclear. Decarbonization, I'll skip this slide. It talks about peak extraction. So you have to decarbonize, if only because fossil fuels are going to run out. Options, renewable energy. We have seen a lot of solutions there. And we have spoken about carbon capture and storage, and we talk about storage being the holy grail. We're all waiting for storage to really come to the party and assist. But the aspect of super grids is a solution as well. I put the slide in because I want to re-emphasize the point of nuclear. It was made earlier as well. Nuclear should be part of the solution. You can see in terms of grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilowatt hour, it's quite clean. And smart grids is the fourth mega trend. Let's talk now about the organizational models. First is the global electricity interconnection picture, which has been shared by State Grid. Certainly, super grids are an option going into the future. Whether it's solar in the north or it's hydro in the north of Africa or it's hydro on the western sides, we really need to look at intercontinental connections going forward. Now, new utility models. I will talk about these in two. One is the asset-based companies. You are likely to get 4 types of business models. The first is the commodity supplier, the wholesaler. Basically receives generation or generates, transmits in bulk. The next is a grid developer. EPCM, build, own, operate. The third is a grid manager, your traditional grid manager, that just manages, operates, and maintains the grid. And you will also have a gentailer. I'm using a research paper by PricewaterhouseCoopers in this case. A gentailer basically generates and is interested in the retail side of the business and interfaces with the transmission company. Another set of utility models on the retail side is likely to emerge. The first is a product innovator, behind the scene, the meter solution provider. You are likely to get also a value-added provider that does deep analytics, as we spoke about this morning, similar to the telecoms business, and provides insights for the consumer. Thirdly, you're likely to get a services bundler that basically deals with convenience products. And lastly is a virtual utility that aggregates, sends the right signals, and does the commercial interfaces for you with the utility. Some new job titles that we are seeing in the utility business these days to prove that things are changing. I'm sure you wouldn't have seen a smart grids engineer advert 20 years ago, or a cyber security engineer. These are the kinds of jobs that we are coming across. So in summary, I have shared that indeed utilities are facing a crisis of possible extinction. I've attributed this to global warming and climate change, as well as a need for a new digital grid. I've suggested some adaptation, and finally I've proposed for you some likely business models for the future. Thank you.